Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today on a Friday. We are presented by Gatorade, and we are delighted to have you with us. Dave Revs, Jerry DiNardo, and Dave Wanstedt. This is a weekend that we've been looking forward to really since the schedules came out. You have the massive game, Oregon and Ohio State. I think to a certain extent we thought Penn State USC might be in that category as well. Obviously with USC losing last week, maybe a little bit less so, but still a great weekend.
I mean, ever since the expansion, right, you started talking about these type of matchups, and this is going to be a great one. I mean, it really is. I hope the game is as good as the build-up, and I believe it will be.
And, you know, the other interesting thing here in the shows, being I watch Big Today every day.
Yes?
Yes, I do, Reverend.
Diligent.
And I love your desk. I love your desk.
You think so?
Yes, I do.
I wouldn't call it my desk.
Okay.
It's the desk.
But the other interesting thing with this expansion, like you said, Jer, is that when you hear these teams talk, the possibility of a two-loss team getting in the playoffs, and there's a lot of teams right now in the Big Ten that have that one loss that they're looking at their schedule and saying, you know, we may lose another one, but we got a real good chance to end up 10-2 and be in the hunt. So, you know, everybody's excited right now. Everybody feels like they got a legitimate shot.
There are a number of teams, and we'll talk about them during the course of the hour, that can still feel like they're very much in that contention, to your point, Wani. But let's start by focusing on this big game. The showdown in Eugene is, in fact, our big story, as it has been all week. Buckeyes come in ranked second. The Ducks are third. First ever matchup of top five teams in the nearly 60-year history of Autzen Stadium. They're both 5-0. Ohio State was picked first in the unofficial Big Ten preseason poll. Oregon was picked second, a game with massive stakes and implications.
It's going to take everything we have to go match the intensity of that environment, match the intensity that they're going to bring, and go get a road win.
I think it'll be a great environment. Two rich, historic programs who have played at a high level for a lot of time. Those are the games you live for as a competitor, as a football player. I don't think you'd want to play in any better game.
Every time we play them, it seems to be a great game. Another heavyweight matchup.
We know that's going to be probably the game of the year, really, that everybody's looking forward towards. They're going to get our best shot. We're going to get their best shot.
They're a great program. They're a great team. I've actually played against them my freshman year, and we 1-0 right now.
Brown in the end zone, wide open, touchdown Ducks. Wow! On the move, Stroud delivers, picked off, Oregon. Shocking the nation.
People forget that they came in to the shoe and beat us my freshman year at Ohio State, so, you know, we got some payback to give them.
We're going to get into the X's and O's of this matchup in just a little bit, but kind of big picture, aside from the schemes, what interests you guys the most about this matchup?
The quarterbacks. You know, I think that this is a quarterback-driven sport. I think this is a quarterback-driven game. To me, whatever quarterback plays better puts their team in the best position to win.
Yeah, I'm looking at both coaches. You know, in a game like this, the decisions that these coaches make, going for it on 4th and 1, punting the ball, or do I kick a field goal? Those things are magnified. You know, at the end of the game, if it doesn't work out, you're always second guessing yourself. Man, maybe I should have gone for it. You know, where it may be in a normal situation, you can overcome that. These two teams are so good that every decision that they make within the game could have a major impact, and it'll be talked about.
I think Dan Lanning leans that way more than Ryan Day does.
A little bit more of a dice roller.
Yeah, for sure. Plus he's at home. Plus it's
Yes.
at night. I mean, Dan Lanning's got the crowd behind him and all that. So I think if there are decisions where it could go either way, I think Dan's more likely to do it than Ryan.
Yeah, you know, the other point to it, I look at this and I look back, you know, Oregon has not won, as good as they've been with Bo Nix and everybody, they haven't won a conference title, right? And got that bye in the playoffs now. That's huge. And they haven't been able to do that in the Pac-12, I mean, since 2020. You know, it's been Utah and it's been Washington. They've always stubbed their toe. So there's a little bit of pressure there. And Ohio State, the other point that I look at, big picture, Ohio State's been dominant, right? They've just, second half, they've run away with it. Oregon has been battle tested. Who was it early? Boise State. Idaho
gave them a good game.
Into the fourth quarter, and they've had a fight and find a way to win. Ohio State hasn't. So I think, can Oregon pull this game into the fourth quarter? Make it,
I don't think there's any question to date. Ohio State's the best team in the conference, and,
Right.
and playing
Right.
the best.
Yeah, I mean,
including
there's kind of two sides to the have you been battle tested, right? The flip side of that is, should you have been tested against Idaho and Boise State? It feels like Ohio State is taking care of business more so than the Ducks have, although Oregon is clearly playing better. I mean, they're playing better these last few games than they did early on in the season. But there's also kind of, to your point, Wani, you think about Ohio State plays in big games like this all the time. Oregon was on the verge of making the playoff last year, and obviously a big game against Washington, and to your point, didn't quite get it done. But this is like the birthright for Ohio State, is playing in these massive games. And for Oregon, it is somewhat unusual territory. It's not uncharted territory. But you do wonder about that kind of the tradition of the program. The flip side is the home game, and I was texting with Rob Mullins, the AD at Oregon. He told me highest ticket demand in the 15 football seasons that he's been at Oregon. I mean, you are going to have a charged up crowd at a place where they have a history of influencing games. Oregon is so hard to beat at home. You can't overstate that.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I don't know that I agree with the first thing you said, because Oregon went into Columbus not too long ago and beat them. I mean,
Absolutely.
So it's not their fault that they haven't had as many games. It's maybe because of the conference they're in, or the Pac-12 wasn't maybe as competitive as the Big Ten. So I don't know that that's going to impact it. The home crowd, certainly. I guess they're wearing all black. I mean, it's going to be a home field advantage for sure.
As a corollary to that, what do you guys think as head coaches about the travel component of this? And it's been pretty well documented that this multiple time zone travel has been challenging for Big Ten teams. They're 1-8. Indiana going to UCLA, the only team that's traveled across multiple time zones and won a game. Ryan Day was talking about his philosophy of how he's going to handle it, which was to stay on East Coast time. Jed Fish is doing differently with Washington. They're leaving a day early. They were practicing early. What do you guys think about how much that travel influences this game?
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of experience with that, so I really don't know. I mean, when I was at Indiana, we went to Washington, we went to Oregon. I don't remember changing our schedule all that much. It's tough when you come back because of how late it is. Wanda, you and I have talked about this. You've had much more experience with it because of the NFL.
Yeah, and when I was at the Dolphins, exactly. We would play Seattle. You can't fly any farther in our country. And we would play then the Oakland Raiders. We left Saturday morning. The guy said, Coach, we're going to be up so early. I said, drink more coffee, but we're teeing off here in about 5 hours after you get up. And we had success. It was never a factor. I like Ryan Day's idea. Let's stay on our time track and just deal with it. It won't be a factor. It won't be a factor.
Again, without having a lot of experience about it, if you make a big deal out of it, then the players think it's a big deal. And so I would weigh that heavily if I was in this situation.
And I also think it just depends what time of day it is, which direction you're traveling.
Who you're playing.
If you're playing a 9 a.m. game on your body clock, then I think you have to make changes, right? Versus playing what is essentially a mid-afternoon game on your body clock, I think is different. And that's or early evening is essentially what Ohio State's going to be doing.
Preparation, in my mind, has always been the priority. Having your own training room to be dealing with those treatments, the guys that are banged up, the meeting rooms, right, where you have the top. Jerry and I both done this. You go into a hotel and the video equipment, and they're bringing you an ice bag, and it's just different. That preparation is a key. When it's kicked off, you ain't gonna need. These teams aren't going to need energy. They ain't going to be tired, trust me on that.
Let's get into some of the X's and O's. I think the easiest way to do it is just when one team has the ball, when the other team has the ball. So let's start. Ohio State has been so overwhelming offensively here. They're balanced with the run game and the pass game, much more so than they were a season ago, running it far better. Oregon's defensive front has been outstanding this year. The defense seems to be getting better, although the rush defense was a problem early in the year. What do you see in terms of that matchup?
Well, both these teams are so explosive, run and pass, that to me this game's going to be played in the red zone from about the 25 or 30-yard line in. I think both these teams are going to move the football between the 20-yard lines. And when you get down in the red zone, again, we were talking in the green room, Rever, 21 trips Ohio State had, and they've scored 20 touchdowns and 1 field goal. That's unreal. I mean, if you didn't say it, I wouldn't believe it, remember?
Yeah, well, I would say when I do say it, you shouldn't believe
yes.
it. Yeah.
But seriously, think about that. Now, I do know this from studying red zone offense and defense. The best teams that play in the red zone, number one, you got to be able to run it. Can you run the ball down there? Number two, you have to throw it. Do you have a quarterback that can do some movement passes to make those zones move so you get some open windows? And number three, do you have a quarterback that make plays on his feet? And Ohio State has all three of those ingredients. So that, to me, if I'm Dan Lanning, if I'm coaching Oregon right now, I am spending extra time in the red zone working, getting ready for their offense, because, it's a lot of stress. He's going to run. He's going to move and throw it. Okay, there's a lot going on in a short area.
Yeah, I think Ohio State's got the better offense of the two for several reasons. They're very multiple. They're basically an option team. Now, when people run the option, it's a talent equalizer. Well, when you have the best talent in the country, it's also a talent advantage. And what Chip Kelly has found is a way to be an option team and still get the skill on the perimeter of the ball, to still get the running backs the ball on direct run. So he can distribute the ball to who he wants, or he can call the option, and then the defense dictates who carries the ball because you're obviously reading somebody. I think Will Howard has had a better year so far than Dylan Gabriel. I think Will Howard will have more of an impact on this game than Dylan Gabriel will, because Will Howard will have more of a chance to have an impact on the game, because when you run the option, you become a runner, and he obviously is going to throw the ball to his very talented receivers. Dylan Gabriel has not been off to a fast start. He's had trouble in the red zone offensively, obviously.
3 picks.
Major trouble.
Right.
But that's why he went to Oregon through the portal to play for the national championship. And so this is his biggest opportunity to date. And, it could go either way with him.
What do you think about that matchup of Oregon's offense against Ohio State's defense? Buckeyes' defense has been phenomenal, leading the nation, total defense, scoring defense.
I just want to, if I can, please, go back and make a comment about Oregon's defense.
The floor is yours, Juan.
Okay.
You never ask for permission.
You're like everybody else. All you want to talk about is scoring points. Offense, big plays, Oregon.
I have very limited perspective.
I don't think anyone's really given their defense credit for being as good as they are. I mean, I think 4 out of the last 5 opponents, they held them to 14 points or less.
Yes.
I mean, so they're playing, and they rotate guys. I love how they do it with their defensive linemen, a lot like most teams do, Jeremy. But they'll play 8 defensive linemen, and the big guy, Jordan Burch, I mean, this guy, 6'6", 330, he could be the first defensive lineman taken in the draft.
He's fabulous. He is a disruptor.
So Oregon's defense, I would just say, if they can match the physicality, of Ohio State, their defense, it might be slighted because of all the offensive clock.
I'll see your going back and give you another going back. Okay.
We're never going to get through this. You're making Jacob Ruffman, our producer, very nervous.
That's okay.
He's worried this block could take up the entire show.
He'll be fine. He's got 2 kids at home now.
Just one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just one. So if you look at the last week's game, I find this timing great for Justin Fry, the offensive line coach at Ohio State. That Iowa defense, I'm going to tell you, and I know they gave up a lot of yards.
Yes.
But what happened at the line of scrimmage was as physical of a line of scrimmage game that I have seen in a long time. And if anything could get the Ohio State offensive line ready for the talented defensive line, they're very talented, they're very young, and they rotate a lot of people. I just think it's good fortune for the offensive line at Ohio State to have played that game against Iowa going into this game.
And to have played as well as they did, I mean, to go over 200 rushing yards on Iowa is no small feat. And I do think, like, when you look at where is an area where one of these teams has had issues this year, I really think the only one that you can point to, other than the red zone issues for Oregon, is the run defense for the Ducks early on this year. Now, it's been a lot better. It's been a lot better. But has that been about not facing teams that run it as well?
having gone to camp, I think it's partly a product of they were very young and talented and could run, very athletic, and they've gotten game reps now.
Yeah, and they've gotten better, which leads me to the other side, right, Rever, of the ball.
That's his job. So now you're going to leave the other side.
Well, I want to
any structure that
I want to talk
in,
some defense.
We had something.
I know
planned
these
out
teams.
there.
I know these teams score 100
It's
points a
been
game. But I'm
blown up.
trying to give the defense a little bit of love, okay? But seriously, we talk about improvement. Oregon's defensive line, I think their offensive line may have improved more so.
Right.
I mean, really. I mean, you look at Oregon. We talked about it the first week of the show here. Oh, they're giving up sacks. They're not very effective. Well, they shuffled a lot of people on that Oregon offensive line. And the one thing that kind of does make sense to me, we were talking earlier, you know, yes, they played Michigan State. They beat Michigan State. But Joe Rossi, the defense coordinator at Michigan State, who used to be at Minnesota, his defense brings a lot of pressure, a lot of multiple stuff. We all know that. And Oregon faced that, and they did a very good job of that. And they have gotten better on both sides of the ball. So offensive line right now, I mean, they're playing as good as they've played all year long. And yeah, Jim Knowles' defense, we know the problems that's coming, but at least they have made progress. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
They're also, they being Oregon, also very talented in the offensive line
Yes.
when I was there. But, you know, it takes a while for them to come along, and it has taken a little bit of time. But they don't lack for talent at the line of scrimmage. Oregon doesn't lack for talent on either side of the ball.
Right. I mean,
that,
and we talked about that even coming into the year, was if you watched Oregon on tape a season ago, defensively they were really good, and they were built, I hate to use generalizations, but they were built like a Big Ten team. They were built from the line of scrimmage out, and I think that's Lanning's defensive background and all of that coming into play. Have we covered all the areas we want to cover? Does anyone want to back up, talk about travel again? Or
Coach,
yeah,
special teams.
Oh.
Wait a minute. Don't underestimate. When Ryan Day lost to Georgia, it was a fake punt that he would have won the game on.
Our big stat is brought to you by IHOP. We've talked about how good Ohio State's defense is, #1 in the nation in terms of yards allowed. Penn State's not far behind. The Nittany Lions are third, actually fourth, picking up right where they left off last year as they head into that battle with USC tomorrow. They were second in the nation in total defense last year. They are very physical, Wani. USC has struggled on the line of scrimmage. Does that feel like the matchup to you? Is this a line of scrimmage game?
Yeah, it definitely does. You know, Penn State, fourth in the nation in defense right now. And the other thing about Penn State's defense against this offensive line, we were talking pressure. Jacob Allman, our producer, gave me this note earlier.
Ruffman.
Ruffman, I'm sorry. That
it's his second mention in this show.
Yeah, I'm trying to give Jacob some love.
Yeah. He's in the Allman Brothers Band.
Even if
Jacob Ruffman.
He works for Fox. I called it. But my point is, that Penn State is pressuring 38% of the time. I mean, that is a big number in my mind. That's a lot of confidence in their defensive coordinator, obviously Tom Allen, that they can execute it and that he's got players that'll make plays and so forth. But Ohio State, you know what bothers me, or USC, what bothers me about their offense is I see balls being dropped, as talented as they are. You know, guys getting turned loose. They've made a lot more progress running the ball, in my opinion, with that offensive line than protecting the passer. Now, that's not going to be easy. Lincoln Riley needs to recognize that and try to help that offensive line. His quarterback, Miller Moss, he's getting killed back there, guys. You can say, oh, he threw 2 interceptions last week. He's getting hit in the mouth way too much. Way too much. So they, in my opinion, USC's offense needs to tighten things up. We got to execute better, and we got to try to run the ball, even though it may not be pretty early, to just slow down that front of Penn State.
I think we're going to see a real response from USC. I mean, this program's got too much tradition, too much pride to go into Minnesota. And we talked a week ago about where they came out of the Wisconsin game, USC, what maybe they feel about the Midwestern schools that haven't been in the national spotlight all as much time. I think USC is growing with the Big Ten and learning this thing might be a little different. And I think it'll start with the USC defense. It's interesting. Denton Lynn was hired by Lincoln Riley to stop the big plays. Andy Kotelnicki was hired by James Franklin to create big plays. I think that coordinator matchup is really going to be interesting. And I think Kolenicki will go at him right away. He'll try to break him. You know, they gave up last week against Minnesota. They gave up 8 plays over 16 yards, including a 40-yard and a 25-yard. Now, Denton Lynn, early in the season, it looked like he had solved the defensive problems that USC had last year. So I expect a response from them. But I expect a response from USC's entire team. I will be shocked if they come in and don't play their best game, whether they win or lose, and they have to.
They've got to start faster. I mean, they have 17 first-quarter points all year combined. Dan Lynn against USC, or for USC against Penn State's an interesting matchup because, of course, he went to Penn State, right?
We covered him. So is he getting old or are we getting old?
He is getting old at the same rate we are, but we are older than he is by a measurable distance. Okay. Yeah, we're keeping our margin ahead of him in a strange twist.
You know, when I look at, that's USC's defense. When I look at this Penn State offense, if I'm defending them, I mean, there's a lot of stress on this defensive coordinator. I mean, now, you know, Penn State, we know about the speed. And between Clifford, Evans, they got the receivers. So we got to respect them. And then you throw in, obviously, Allen and Singleton at running back. And now the way they're using their Swiss Army knife, is it Warren?
Tyler
Warren. I mean, running it, a little bit of Wildcat mentality. He does it all. That's a lot for USC to prepare for. And it's just not, there's a big difference. When you're coaching defense, okay, they run the Wildcat and they run this, okay, but they're not very good at it. They're not very talented. So there's stress, you got to work on it. But when you're talking about running backs that are averaging 6.5 yards a carry together and the receivers that are, and a quarterback that's completing 70% of his pass, those defensive meetings are going to be long this week, Jared, at USC.
They might be long, but they're going to cut back their package. If I'm Denton Lynn and I've had problems with tackling, I've had some problems with contain, the last thing I want to do is try to be a genius and show a lot of things to Penn State.
I agree.
Because you're just going to confuse your defense. So I would suspect Denton will back off of multiple defenses and let's play fundamentals because we have enough problems defending Wildcat and defending all the formations that Penn State's going to give us. If we put too much in, it's going to multiply and it's going to be our players are going to be thinking and not running.
And it's bringing guys to the ground, which to your point has been a problem, and they've worn down late in games, and I think that's why I go back to what we were talking about originally, line of scrimmage, physicality. To this point, it doesn't seem like USC is quite there, but man, they're going to be a desperate team. I mean, their back is up against the wall. They really can't afford to lose another game. You've got the home crowd, all of those things, a marquee opponent.
They got some tough games coming up.
They do. No, their schedule is not easy. So that's the story there. The Nittany Lions are heading west. Washington's heading east. They'll be in Kinnick. Huskies 4-2 after topping Michigan. Iowa's 3-2 after falling to OSU, but boasting one of the nation's better rushing attacks. Both solid on the defensive end. Steve Belichick's unit 10th in the nation in scoring D. Phil Parker's guys are 25th. We marveled, Jerry, at Iowa's consistency on defense. We do it every year. 8 straight years they've allowed fewer than 20 points per game. It's the longest streak in the nation. How do you see it matching up against this Washington attack?
I see Phil Parker again. He's not going to change. What he has to do is expect like the unexpected, right? I mean, Jed Fish to me is a fantastic play caller. I think he's gonna find some spots, try to find some spots in the Iowa defense. He's gonna throw the ball deep. Last week he threw the ball deep 3 times in the first quarter, including the first play of the game. So I think you have someone that has a fairly simple package in Phil Parker against Jed Fish, who's a terrific play caller that will probably give him some things, give Phil some things that they haven't practiced against. And I think that's one of the things that makes someone a really good play caller, when you give every defense every week something they haven't prepared for. So I see it unfolding with 2 great coordinators. One happens to be the head coach and one Phil Parker.
Yeah, the one thing that on Iowa's defense, it's kind of surprised me. We talked about this last week, the big pass plays. They've given up 14 over 20. Yeah. The last 2 years, Iowa 18 one year, 20 the last 2 years they've led with the fewest amount of big pass plays. And this year, 14 already, that's a little bit of concern. You know, for particularly a guy like Jed Hughes that wants to throw the ball.
That's what I'm saying. Phil will have a chance to protect that number because it's going to be challenged.
Yeah, and on the other side, we talk about, you know, Washington's offense. Really, it hasn't been what they're doing. When I see them, I see missed opportunities. You know, I mean, a penalty it's hard to drive the ball 80 yards clean and score, you know, without there being a penalty or a drop ball and they've had penalties. They've been in situations and missed field goals, you know, so they've almost, not self-destructive, but I think they've held themselves back on offense. If they can put it all together, this offense, they could explode.
And you know, Jed mentioned this because he was an offensive coordinator at Minnesota, then he was the quarterback and wide receiver coach at Michigan, and he knows the atmosphere. And so this is another thing about the expansion, about these teams and these coaches understanding each other, right? So Penn State gets to go to Southern Cal and find out what it's like to play in the Coliseum. Well, the Washington guys get to come to Iowa City, and I think the mental adjustment is harder for the West Coast teams like Washington coming into Iowa. And the reason I bring this up is Jed Fish has been there, and he'll do a good job explaining that this will be as hostile a crowd as you'll ever play in.
And again, we were talking about the body clock, 9 a.m. their time for that kickoff. So
that is adjusting.
That is, and he is. Yes. No, they practiced early. They left yesterday.
Right.
They were going to do a walkthrough early today. To your point, Wani, one thing that really stands out to me about Washington, they're 21st in the nation in total offense, so yards gained. They're 92nd in scoring.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a massive
They've hurt themselves.
gap, right? There's a lot of empty yards in there that as you say, self-destructing a little bit. See if they can cut down on it against a team that a lot of people self-destruct against. 2 games tomorrow here on the Big Ten Network. Starts at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific as Wisconsin travels to Rutgers. Then later, the Gophers go to the Rose Bowl to square off with the Bruins at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. All tomorrow, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. And Jerry, we have questioned the direction of Wisconsin's offense a little bit under second-year coordinator Phil Longo. They went out and hung 52 on Purdue last week. Do you feel like maybe they have turned the corner, or is that more a function of where the Boilermakers are?
I think both. Regardless of who you play, a win's a win. And when the situation that Wisconsin was in, where everyone was on their backs about 4th and 1, they're in the shotgun, you know, all the noise about the offense, which I thought was unwarranted. This is as good a offensive scheme as anybody else, just because the people in Wisconsin aren't used to quarterback being underneath center. They find that as low-hanging fruit to get after a coaching staff. So they beat a bad Purdue team. It still gives their players confidence. The players still get to get up, look at the big screen. I got my block. I completed my pass. I caught the pass. Doesn't matter who you beat. It gives a team confidence that was in a situation, that Wisconsin was in a situation where everybody was questioning what they were doing offensively. So, yes, it helps.
Yeah, and I'm still I'm not questioning what they're doing. I want to see the players come out, and they're going to have to play at a high level, a lot higher level this week against Rutgers on the road than what they did. But their defense, I mean, you know, give Wisconsin's defense. They came up with interceptions. They came up with turnovers. They got sacks last week. That all helps the defense as far as building confidence moving forward. But this Rutgers team a little bit, if I can jump there, you know, the perception is really not the reality. I mean, they are right now, Kelly McManus, their quarterback, he's thrown 3 interceptions. 2 of them were last week. You know, now everybody, oh, God, here we're back into the quarterback quandrum again, okay? Their running back, Monongai, they're on the goal line, and he doesn't get it in. 6 plays, and they don't score. All of a sudden, is he as good as, you know, this is a good football team. They lost to Nebraska by 7 points, and I think the perception is that it was a lot worse than that.
I think the big thing to think about with Rutgers, because we talk about who's going to make it to the Big Ten championship game, and you're almost certainly going to have a 1-loss team in the Big Ten championship game in conference. You look at Rutgers' schedule, I know they lost last week, but it's still really manageable. Illinois is the only ranked team left on that schedule. Could Rutgers be in that discussion? Could we have a several-way tie for that spot? I mean, again, I kind of, to your point, I don't think you can write off Rutgers so easily. Wasn't their best performance, weren't great on the goal line, but it's still a really good team.
Right. I mean, when they broke up the East, I could hear Greg Schiano screaming from New Jersey, and I live in Florida.
Yes.
I mean,
he and Michael Oxley got together and had a party.
He's going to play four West. He's going to play 4 West Division teams.
Right.
Of course, this is good for Rutgers. The problem, after I just said all I said about the Wisconsin team, is of all the games that we've talked about so far, I think the biggest mismatch is the Rutgers defense against the Wisconsin offense.
Even after last week?
Yeah, even after last week.
Okay.
Wisconsin's going to have to keep the run game in the offense. Otherwise, Greg is just going to bring pressure, and you're going to be 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, and being 2nd and 10 against a Rutgers defense in Piscataway is a big problem.
Pretty interesting quote from Phil Longo. I don't know if you saw this. He was talking about Braden Locke's performance, and he said that Locke checked out of 17 plays into different plays, and he got 16 of them right. So we're talking about the grasp of the offense, and he had been in this offense longer than Van Dyke, obviously, given the nature that Van Dyke had transferred. So that's pretty impressive, and everyone in the facilities talk about his grasp of the offense, so maybe he's ready to take a step, and he'll be tested.
It's awful helpful of Rutgers to know that stat. I mean, it really is. Because
that's a lot.
But I'm going to start bluffing now. Yeah. I mean, it's going to impact.
Well, Phil said it. I
understand.
Yeah,
I
just don't hang it on me.
I'm surprised. Yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Okay, so what about Northwestern and Maryland? Both those teams, Rutgers and Wisconsin, looking for Big Ten win number 2. Northwestern and Maryland looking for Big Ten win number 1 tonight. Maryland's coming off a bye week. They get a Northwestern team that has to travel and plays on a short week. What do you think about this matchup and how that might factor in?
I think it'll factor in, but the only thing that's going to factor in for Maryland is to play for an entire game, to stop having 80 and 90 yards in penalties, in my opinion, to be a little more emotional about the game, and it's not, nonchalant. I don't see a team that plays with high energy for Maryland. Northwestern, I think, does play with high energy. Jack Lausch having a really terrific game. I thought they might go back to Mike Wright. I was way wrong. Lausch played really, really well, and he played well enough to go into College Park and have some confidence and beat Maryland.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Maryland, they talked earlier in the year, Mike Loxley, about how he had to replace, I think it was 4 of the 5 offensive linemen. He got 3 portal guys that come in, and they were, early on, they were playing well. And the last couple of weeks, last week, 8 tackles for losses, 5 sacks the last time they played. That's the key, and I'll tell you, they were banged up some. When they were playing good, Hemby was running the ball like crazy. Felton, their receiver, Ty Felton, I think he could be the best receiver in the whole league. Those guys were all banged up at the end of that game, so they need to get their guys back healthy, and they need to start this game fast. That would be my thought.
But they lost to 2 teams that are being coached for the first time by their head coach. They lost to Indiana, and they lost to Michigan State. And a year ago, we're talking about Maryland
taking a step.
Yeah, right? They're taking a step, which has cursed the program since that was the narrative. It really is.
Yeah.
Because they were so focused about taking the next step forward, they stepped back.
And one of those games last year that they lost, I don't think people expected them to lose, was in Evanston against Northwestern. And to your point of playing with enthusiasm and being ready to play, Kellen Wyatt was quoted this week as saying, "We remember that game. We regret that game, and we are really looking forward to playing this one." So maybe avenging that defeat a year ago gets the fire lit under the Terps.
Yeah, and in Northwestern, their stars, the Hennings at receivers, Cam Porter at running back, their stars need to play like stars in this game to give them a chance to win this football game.
Now, Bryce Kurt's really nice game last week, a receiver who had some big moments a season ago. Maybe they can get him integrated more into the offense. Tomorrow, Big Ten Tailgate live from the Rose Bowl, previewing a full slate of conference action. The fun begins at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. The game is in prime time here on the Big Ten Network. The Gophers coming off their huge win over USC. How do they build on it, Coach?
They just continue to get better. I mean, this is PJ Fleck, right? I mean, to a T. Tough game against North Carolina. Who plays North Carolina in the opener? Tough loss against Iowa. Tough loss against Michigan. USC comes in town. He's got it totally set up. No team plays harder. Maybe other teams play as hard, but by midseason, PJ's got his team going 100 miles an hour, and this happens every single year. Hats off to him and his staff.
Yeah, and we were concerned about their identity. Remember early in the year, and they established Darius Taylor, 140 some yards against SC. And the thing that I loved about it, in the fourth quarter, think about this, they outscore USC 14-0, and one of those drives was a 75-yard drive. I mean, that's having your guys coached up, and that's being focused and finishing the job. Outstanding.
And there was really no evidence prior to that game that they could run the ball like that, because we kept saying it's not a typical Minnesota offense, but now it looks like it is. And it's a great time to have a run game going out to the coast.
And you have a quarterback who's playing well, too, in Max Brosmer. UCLA, I mean, we know the record. The last 4 teams they played are a combined 20-1. So let's cut them a little bit of slack here. They're at home. I'm really interested to see how they come out here.
I've cut them a lot of slack, because if you watch the game tape, you can see improvement on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I agree. And they start fast. You know, give Deshaun Foster some credit. His team comes out of the locker room and they get going, and then the second half, as the game goes, it weans on, and they just lose. I don't know if it's ability or they just kind of lose their edge, but they come out of the gate ready to play.
I think part of that's Eric Bieniemy's opening script. I mean, he does a really good job with that. It seems like he really attacks the defense that first drive in a lot of different areas.
Gophers, on the other hand, a team that has not started well, just 12 first-quarter points all year. So we'll see if they can rectify that, or if UCLA can take advantage of the Gophers' tendencies not to get out of the gate well. Finally, Illinois and Purdue. Illinois is coming off a bye. Purdue is going to be without Hudson Card. They just revealed that this morning. Their quarterback is in concussion protocol. Illinois, we were talking about teams that could still be in this discussion for the college football playoff. Illinois absolutely could be. Again, they have a very favorable schedule going forward. What do you think about the Illini as they head into a game with the reeling Boilermakers?
Yeah, you know, you don't like the bye coming off of what happened at Penn State, right? I mean, you got dominated up there. But it gives them a chance to kind of regroup, talk about the goals like we're talking about here. And this is, I hate to say it, Purdue is probably the perfect opponent for them to get back on track again.
I mean, they played well at Penn State. I mean, Penn State's a really good team. This is the most complete team Brett has had. But the schedule lies out tremendous. I mean, off week, Purdue is really, they've got Michigan and Oregon left.
They go to Oregon, right.
Yeah, Michigan's beatable.
Oh, absolutely. And that's going to be a huge game next week. They're rededicating Memorial Stadium, 100-year anniversary of Red Grange. There'll be a lot of emotion around that game.
And Brett Bielema is going to be very mad at you because he has a 1-0 mentality. So the way you led into this game, he is going to be upset with you. And he used to like you, too.
He did up until like 10 minutes ago. 2 minutes ago.
2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
On Purdue's side, I would just say this, Ryan Walters, you know, good coaches can lose games, but don't ever lose the locker room. And that's what I would tell him. Somehow, some way, get him ready to play this week.
And he only has the travel squad, which is his best players. He can get some things done mentally with that group.
Ryan Walters said last week, we are a bad football team right now. So we'll see whether or not they've been able to change that here in the last week. We will see you for all the football. Can't wait for it tomorrow.